Hello and welcome back to another episode of Motors for the Masses, and this week we're having a look at a brand new 2018 Benelli versus a 2018 bike designed by Benelli.
Yes, today we have chosen two bikes from the 125 naked street bike range with the Benelli BN125 and the Keeway RKS 125 Sport.
Benelli have been part of the Tianjin Keeway group since 2005, and you can certainly see where Benelli's Italian heritage has been taken advantage of by Keeway. They are very similar looking, but are they the same underneath? Now, looks-wise, it does seem Benelli were given a bit more money in the design department with this exposed trellis frame and the more chiselled panelled look and the funkier exhaust over Keeway's more relaxed, generic commuter vibe. However,
there are some differences where the Keeway pulls ahead in the design department. For example, this foot peg A-frame thing and the protecty plate thing doesn't look like it's meant to be there. Whereas this one, they've added, we've still got a metal frame there, but they've added this nice little plate to hide everything up, and it just looks like it's supposed to be there. It's better designed in my opinion. I don't know what Mark feels about that, but I'm sure he agrees. Build-wise, I think we're pretty much on par. Everything feels pretty good. The switches are nice. The switches feel the same, but the throttle on this one feels just a little bit stiffer, actually. Yeah, slightly more springy. Whether that's to do with the carburetor itself or the throttle bodies, who knows. But there's other things that the Benelli pulls ahead on. This mudguard thing looks absolutely fantastic. Kind of, I think it's a pressed steel with a trellisy shape cut out of it, whereas this one we've got, well, plastic, which you expect on the back of a bike really, but that's really nice. There's not a lot more to say about it really. They're pretty much similar in design.
Well, my opinion on this side bit, as Malcolm was saying, is that it's actually a bit cheap. It's good quality steel, and it's sturdy, but it just looks not very well put together. And I can see what they're doing. They're following the exposed frame design, but it does look out of place, and it just, with the welds like this, it just doesn't look that great, to be honest. And something that's missing on the Benelli that I like on the Keeway, and that's this little belly pan, and I wish they'd have done that on the Benelli as well. Both bikes use a 4-stroke 2-valve engine, yet with slightly different bore, with the Keeway having a higher compression ratio, meaning the Keeway has 11.3 brake horsepower over the Benelli's 11.
But the Benelli has a slightly more torque at low revs. So you can expect 65 to 70 miles an hour happily out of both of these bikes. Both of these bikes are Euro 4 compliant. Both have a 5-speed gearbox and both are air-cooled. Both have an electric start, and this is where it differs slightly from Euro 3. The Keeway used to have, on the Euro 3 version, a kickstart. That has been omitted. Both bikes use a monoshock rear suspension setup and a telescopic front fork setup, although the Benelli version has the upside down front forks, which looks much sportier in my opinion.
The Keeway uses a 16-litre fuel tank, whereas the Benelli has a 13.6-litre fuel tank.
The Benelli has 260mm front discs, 220mm rear disc with a triple front piston caliper and a double rear piston caliper.
Whereas the Keeway has a 230mm front disc with a triple piston caliper and a 190 rear disc with a double piston caliper.
And this is a pretty good improvement over the Euro 3 version of that. I'm on the wrong side, because that one used to have a drum rear brake and a 220, I believe,
with a double piston caliper.
Double piston caliper. So that's a good improvement in braking.
Indeed, yes, they certainly are boosting up their design and technology,
yeah,
to match the reputation, I say, that Benelli seems to bring forth. Benelli, you know,
bringing it into alignment, we'll say, and maybe not match.
Oh, whatever. Tyre-wise, the Keeway uses a 90 front tyre and a 120 rear tyre, both on 17-inch rims.
Whereas the Benelli has a 100 front tyre and a 130 rear, both on 17-inch rims.
Both bikes are using a cordial tyre. Now, I have to admit, that's not a brand I've heard of, so we can't really comment on the quality of them. But they have slightly different tread patterns, with the Benelli having a wavy pattern in there, which is slightly more attractive, I guess. But other than that, we can't really comment on them. Now, perhaps the slightly wider tyre on the Benelli will give a better dry grip, but they tend to put the correct size tyre on the bike for the weight of the bike and the balance of the bike.
The Keeway weighs in at 136 kilograms.
Whereas the Benelli weighs in at 142, which could account for that slightly wider tyre. Both bikes are similar in size, with the Keeway being 10mm longer at 2090 and 15mm taller at 1090.
But 20mm narrower at 790mm, with a 10mm lower seat height at 760mm.
Sitting on them, what do they feel like? Well, the Benelli has a slightly lower feel, even though it's 10mm higher in the seat height, which is quite unusual. The tank feels quite high, and when you're sitting on it, you feel as though you're right into the tank, like a Street Fighter style.
Yeah, I mean, the pillion part on that one kind of pins you into the position you want to be.
It does. You are right in here. You're up against the back and you're up against the tank.
Yeah. Whereas this one is kind of, although actually a little softer in the seat pad department, there's a lot more space, I suppose, is the best way of describing it, back and forth. And you don't feel that you're being rammed into the tank, which I quite like.
You've got a slightly more comfortable design, I would say, of the instrument panel there, whereas this is just one small digital display, and display, which is like digital, but not quite so digital.
Mine is digital and analog.
It is, and we'll show you that in a second. I like the feel of this. It does feel bigger than a 125.
Yeah.
As you can see here, my knees are bent a bit sitting on this bike. Now, if we just swap bikes for a second.
Yeah.
This feels taller.
It does feel taller.
So I don't quite understand where they're getting their 10 millimetres seat height difference, because it doesn't feel like it is.
No.
I think the figures are wrong on that.
Something's wrong,
In
isn't it?
fact, let's get our tape measure out and measure it.
That's...
So, with a trusty tape measure, bearing in mind we don't know what the shock is set at on this.
It looks like it's at its lowest position.
But off the floor, that looks to me 770. That's 770.
Which is right, that's what
Yeah.
it should be.
Right, let's try this one.
So this one's shock is mostly near the bottom, about 10 mil from minimum.
That's 800.
Is it?
That's 800.
I mean, this could be wound down, but it'll only go down 10 mil from where it is now.
So I would say the website needs updating, Keeway.
Yeah. So both these bikes are very similarly designed up the front here. This one is physically wider in its plastics design. Got some pride in their product. They've got Benelli stamped in the plastic. But then so does the Keeway also have Benelli stamped in the plastic. So that just shows that they're there all the way with the design and the products, and they're actually making parts for this bike.
I agree. Now, I love the design of this. It's very Street Fighter-y. I love this, like this bumblebee headlight look that they started doing on the old Hornets and the Bandits years ago. And I just love the look of it. Both of them, they're very similar, although that one seems slightly more aggressive than this does.
It's flatter and more angled.
That's more that way and that's more that way. But they're both really nice. They're very pretty looking bikes from the front. Now, looking from the back, I love this little grille design on the Benelli here and this nice pointed light, but I prefer the look of this LED style light at the back here. They've got very similar, again, Benelli indicators on both bikes. Although, like you said before, this is a much better design than this plastic thing here. It's a difficult one. I don't know which one is better built. I think the build quality seems just as good, but different on both bikes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the trouble is you look around that bike and there's a lot of things on there that are labelled Benelli.
There is.
And it does say, was that designed by Benelli on the tank?
Designed by Benelli on the tank, designed by Benelli down here.
So I think there's an awful lot of Benelli in that bike, even though it's a Keeway and it's priced as such.
Yes. But the overall feel of it and the quality of it, they've both got centre stands as well as a side stand, which we haven't put them on yet.
No, that's often missing on sport type bikes, isn't it?
A couple of things I'm disappointed with the Benelli. I think my expectations with the Benelli was slightly higher. I was expecting it to be, you know, part of Italian heritage. Mind you, I suppose, being Italian, perhaps, you know, poorly built reputation precedes them.
Maybe.
If their cars are anything to go by. Until you get to the likes of Lamborghini and Ferrari and all that, but you know what I mean. The trellis design, love that. I really am disappointed with that
these back
kick plate and
things.
that back peg arrangement.
And it's not very shiny either. You'd expect that to be really shiny, that frame, and it's a bit dull back
They
here.
could have designed that a bit better and they could have made it slightly different, like they have with this. They didn't have to cover it with plastic, but it could have been slightly better made, I think.
Yeah.
But overall, I think they're both lovely looking bikes.
I quite like these wheels as well, the little kick-off thing.
Yeah, both of them. Again, slightly different design, but both very nice looking. However, we need to take them out on the road and see what they go like. First of all, let's start them up.
Have a little listen.
Now, just before we start them, I just want to point out these swing arms. Now, obviously they're both quite sturdy, but you can see the difference in design. The Keeway has a box section, which is quite standard on most, whereas the Benelli tends to have something slightly better designed and, I don't know, it seems thicker as well.
Yeah, it looks more durable.
Expected more. Well, I have to say, I think the Keeway sounded better, but is it better on the road? So we're back from our ride, and I've got very different opinions about both these bikes.
They are very different.
They are very different. Now let's start with the Keeway RKS 125 Sport, designed by Benelli.
Yes.
That manoeuvres really well. I'm really pleased with how it manoeuvres. It feels lighter on the front end than the Benelli does.
Yes.
However, it also feels a bit pokier on the uptake than the Benelli does.
I would have to attribute that to possibly the clutch adjustment.
Okay.
It starts going much quicker than it should because it's not quite adjusted right. But,
Right, fair enough.
However,
it's comfortable. I like the comfortability of the seat. I could imagine riding on a decent journey on that and be very comfortable.
I don't like the way it leans forward very slowly.
Really?
I like a flat seat. This one is a lot flatter and holds you where you want to be.
Well, coming on to this does feel a lot lower and it pushes you right into the tank.
Yeah.
Now, although they're the same width, being closer to the tank, the bars feel wider because your arms are wider, closer, if you know what I mean.
This one is wider, isn't it?
Very, very tiny, but it feels a lot wider. Whereas here, that one, you're riding like that. This one, you're riding like that. So the bars feel wider.
Well, the seat is lower. And
It is,
I think
and you're closer to
in
these
relation
bars.
to the bars, they're slightly higher.
Yeah, but you're also closer. And that, to me, improves the manoeuvrability.
Yeah.
I think at slow speeds, this manoeuvres really, really well.
Super well. If
It
you were
does.
to take your test on this, it would be brilliant because you could do the manoeuvring, no issues at all.
It just feels a lot nicer to ride. Don't get me wrong, I like riding that and it feels nice. That is, to me, a more comfortable ride on a longer journey, whereas this feels better to ride. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, but I still feel that I prefer to go on long journeys on this one.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, this seat is comfortable, don't get me wrong, but it just feels... I mean, you are well in here.
Yeah, well, I quite like that. I mean,
Bearing in
on
mind,
my bike,
yeah,
with the hump, I do sit with my ass right in the hump.
your front bottom is really on the tank, and your main bottom is really on the back of this hump. Whereas that, you've got quite a bit of...
Manoeuvrability.
Sorry about that.
All right, so a different opinion there then. You prefer that one for a long journey, I'd prefer this one.
But
Manoeuvrability,
overall,
this
I
one is
prefer
better.
the feel of this as it rides.
Yeah.
Sound-wise, that sounds slightly better. This sounds a little bit like...
Do you know what? I think sound is irrelevant.
A scooter.
They both sound too quiet.
They are quiet. They are. I mean, that's the...
It's a 125.
the European regulations and all that rubbish for you. It's got a weird-looking exhaust. I prefer the look of the exhaust on this.
Yeah.
But the sound of the exhaust on that one. It's a very nice-looking bike. I really like it. I really do. And I love that colour scheme, the black and orange, as you can see by my Mustang, which is now sold, by the way. Yeah.
By YGT.
I've sold it. It's going. It's gone. It's gone.
Oh, it's gone.
It's gone. It's gone. By the time this video comes out, it's well gone. But that means I've got lots of money to spend on my Mac 1. That's coming
This isn't
soon.
a Mac 1 video.
I'm sorry. I waffled. I apologise.
Right, so overall then, Benelli is a nicer bike to ride unless you're going a long way and then you want that one.
I think so. But you
Although
think the other way around?
Yeah, I prefer this one all round.
Okay.
But let's face it, as a 125, you're not going to be going on massive journeys anyway.
No. I mean, overall, there's not much to choose between them, to be honest. I mean, I'm really happy with both of them.
Yeah.
I think they're fantastic. But there is a difference in price.
There is a difference in price.
The Keeway comes in at £1,899 on the road with a 2-year parts and labour warranty. The Benelli is...
2,229, I believe.
Yeah, nearly 400 quid more. Is it 400 quid more bike?
Was it 299? Whatever, it's £400 more.
I think it is.
Design-wise, yes.
It looks
You've got
£400 nicer.
All this extra frame in here with the lattice work.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it could have been slightly better done. The paint and
It
the
rides
welds
nicer.
could
I
be
really
nicer.
do like the overall ride of it. And I think my money would go on the Benelli.
I would put the extra 400 in and buy this too.
Don't get me wrong, that's a
good
brilliant buy.
Yeah.
I mean, for under £2,000, I mean, £1,899, you can't go wrong. It's a fantastic bike. And we've seen a lot worse for a lot more.
Yeah, and it's got all the stuff. It's Euro 4. It's got a reasonable sized tank. It's got combined braking, discs front and rear.
Discs front and back.
It's-
Triple piston caliper, double piston caliper.
Yeah, electric start, good tyres. I mean, they're pretty grippy, these tyres. They
They are, actually, yeah.
It's got nice lights, nice style, just got a comfortable seat. Where can you go wrong for that kind of money?
You can't. So I think that comes down to personal preference and if you've got 400 quid spare. If you haven't, I think you would be extremely happy with the Keeway RKS. Now that comes in 3 different colours. You've got the black with the orange, you've also got a blue and a red, a very rich red, very similar to the red on the Benelli. Strange that.
Yeah.
The Benelli comes in its traditional colours of black or white
that's a
or
metallic, isn't it?
red, but whichever you choose, they all come with the red trellis frame. That, I think, brings us to the end of this video.
I think so.
Thank you very much for watching. Please join us next time when we'll be back with more bikes, more cars and more projects. But until then, please ride and drive carefully.
But have fun.
Bye-bye.
Lots of it.